2 minutes of questions. Perhaps I could just go back to one of your issues about market research. I'm just wondering about your views on how we might conduct that research, whether we should outsource it, whether it should be done in-house, and how we might fund that market research.
We were thinking that probably send a team from the company to go overseas in the market that they want to expand into, and find out and establish connections themselves.
But also additionally from their exporting experience, having a look at retailers and distributors in those local companies and just seeing what products are cycling through and how quickly they are cycling through.
What do you mean by increased funding?
Increased funding, okay. So basically greater access to funding is required for the expansion of the company, and we're just suggesting that a number of ways they could do this would be either, because debt financing is quite difficult in this financial climate for a small and medium enterprise to secure, there are a number of ways that we just listed.
One of the ways would be to get government funding, because right now every country is trying, or every government is trying to support their own industries by a stimulus package. Now we assume that in the latest budget by Mr. Swan, or in this case from New Zealand, and they can give money to these small, medium companies because they're the ones who are going to be more affected by the economic crisis. And if they support in some way, like a subsidy, which may not be repayable because they're just trying to keep the local jobs safe in order not to suffer more from the unemployment recession.
And currently you're only financing from using your operating cash flows. That might not be enough to sustain your big plans and ambitions of venturing into international markets, which is why we need to increase funding from the possible sources that we listed.
And diversifying sources means that the company, instead of just sourcing from its operating cash flow, which is sensitive to market conditions within the countries they operate, diversifying the strategies means that a broader input can come in.
Okay, so if we raise debt from a number of sources,
yes,
and that reduces our reliance on operating cash flows.
Yes.
Yes.
How do we service that debt?
Yes. We in our MPV analysis, there we go. The increments in sales due to the recommendations we put in place, if they were implemented with the better market understanding, increasing demand, we're able to pay off the debts completely within how many years was it? Within 3 years?
Let me just get this straight. To reduce our reliance on operating cash flows, we raise capital from a number of different sources. And we service that with the operating cash flows that the new fund...
Because they're more sustainable and it's covered the expansion process. The initial setup costs are always going to be a lot greater than the continuing maintenancing and expansion.
Final quick question. Where does the 10% discount rate from?
The discount factor, that is inclusive of the current interest rates. It's inclusive of market stability in the local country, and it incorporates all those factors.
In terms of the increase in sales, so I can see over the next 7 years you're looking to almost triple sales at the current level. Where do you see the majority of that sales growth being driven from in terms of, do you see that coming from within New Zealand or from export markets?
Majorly from the exports. So South Korea is a big market, and we're also exporting to Malaysia and other Southeast Asian markets. So of course New Zealand and Australia are our major markets, but the share is comparatively lesser as compared to our exports.
New Zealand as itself is a very small market. It's good that you guys are already in Australia because you're quite a new company, but New Zealand itself is a very small economy. So that's why we're saying that you should be more export focused.
I had a question about one of the other recommendations that you raised, the reducing costs. So you said one of the things we needed to do within the organisation was to make sure that we reduce costs, and I sort of understand that we need to have some kind of cost management. But as an organisation, I think we pride ourselves on sort of producing premium quality products. And to send a signal to employees all of a sudden that cost management and cost reduction is another one of our important sort of strategic objectives would seem to send a conflicting message to them. So is there any way we perhaps manage?
I can understand the concerns in that area. We were mainly concerned with the product management because you have food that's got a high rate of spoilage. Storage costs, refrigeration and so forth would require significant inputs by the company. When it could be managed better, it wouldn't devalue your product in any way, but it would make the company work more efficiently. And as we said with the targeted advertising, for example, focusing on specific markets and making sure that it's actually hitting them in the right areas, rather than sending out a generalised message like Coke do. You have that appeal of being a smaller, centralised company, and people will value you more as an underdog, I suppose, in the market, and you can capitalise on that.
And you can still churn out premium products in the market without, with reducing costs. For example, streamlining. In Japan, they don't have, like Kristen said, they're not so good with the sweeter taste. So, and they're big on green tea. So why not focus more on the green tea products as compared to, you know, the juice?
There's probably more this economies of scale here, which sort of seems to signal to me that we need to find some manufacturing efficiencies somehow.
Yeah.
And so that would typically involve sending a signal to employees that waste isn't acceptable.
But we believe that reducing costs and achieving cost efficiencies is what every company should do, no matter what strategy they follow, whether it's a differentiation or a cost strategy.
And that is congruent with your aim to promote environmental sustainability for the long run.
And then just one final question, and then you were talking about product management as being the key way that you thought you could potentially reduce costs, inventory management, spoilage and the rest. Did you factor into that recent acquisition of the Australian bottling? And
yes, that was a step in the right direction. But as we said as well, you are looking at the implementation of just-in-time management, which has proven to reduce inventory expenses significantly in car industries in Japan, for example. But because you're operating primarily on exporting and you don't have distribution centres in each country, then it's important to maintain that communication.
You penciled us in for some collaborations. I didn't hear much about that, and I was, and yet we're heading down an acquisition path, it seems. I thought we were. What do you mean by collaboration? What does that mean?
Well, we believe that in a more global economy, especially if you're a small company, you are competing against big ones that have a lot of money and a lot of resources. So we feel that if you're little, it's better for you to group and combine with other small alliances or companies like yourself. And that's why we also said if you want to explore more, maybe you should also find a local agent where you want to go, and that's where you build these alliances because, okay, you know, I'm better at management, but you're better at producing the raw materials for the bottles. So that's why we assume that this alliances is going to be good for both of us.
But the reason we bought the plant in South Australia was because we want to maintain control of product quality.
Yeah.
Jennifer says a premium provider. Using an agency structure, isn't that going to diminish the amount of control we have over product quality?
Mainly to target your advertising and hit the markets that you want to. That's what we were suggesting with collaborations with distributors and forming a close bond and just enabling that communication so that you're not wasting your resources on trying to implement a strategy overseas that may not be working.
this time, thank you.